don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the last thing I would leave parents with. Like, I am a human. I am flawed. Man, I have learned over the last year to ask for lots of help, and it's been great. You will find that people want to help you, and they're willing to do it.
No perfect humans, yeah.
No, I tell kids, I'm like,
humans.
you find a unicorn, I want to see that thing.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen one.
Ken, what a great conversation with Shannon. I mean, how some pieces of advice seem so obvious but pertinent
100%.
that you don't think about it, right? And you need to be reminded. What great reminders from Shannon Garza.
And she's just so willing to be vulnerable. You're going to love this conversation with Detective Garza. She is absolutely amazing. I am Ken Hyde. This is Katie Rodenbaugh. This is only our second edition of the West Ada School District podcast. So let's give a little background. Again, my name is Ken Hyde. I am one of the communication specialists on the comms team here at the district. So I do all the YouTube stuff, all the visual production stuff. I love telling visual stories. Again, my background is television and broadcast journalism. So I love getting to do this podcast with Katie. I get to annoying her is so much fun. But more important than that, what I think I want you all to know about me is my son just graduated from Mountain View High School. My daughter is going to be a junior there. You guys, we are parents too. Yeah. They spent every single day from kindergarten through graduation in West Ada schools. So yes, we're employees of the district, but we're parents too, and that's what this podcast is about.
Absolutely, Ken. And I'm Katie Rodenbaugh. I'm also a parent in the district. My boys have, like Ken's kids, have been here since kindergarten. We will have a 4th grader and an 8th grader at Galileo STEM Academy this year.
Flies.
It goes so fast. Our oldest is going to be a sophomore at Eagle High. And my husband actually graduated from Eagle, so that's kind of fun. I love the nostalgia. And my husband went to all West Ada schools. I've been in education a long time. I am the community liaison here with the district, which basically means I get to build relationships and partnerships with families, community members, businesses, industry, that kind of thing, just to bring more resources in to serve our kids and families. And it's such a privilege to serve on the communications team and get to help get more information out there and help all of us parents.
It's a lot of fun. And I hope you all had a chance to hear the first episode. If you didn't, you can go back and listen. But the reason why we're doing this, you guys really, again, we're parents. This podcast is for you. It's for our parents. It's for our students. And how do we give you guys tools, hopefully, and conversations that equip you to navigate? Being a parent is not easy.
It's hard. It's the hardest job. Yeah.
And so how do we best equip you and inform you and let you know what's going on in the district? And so that really is kind of the why of behind the podcast.
Yeah. And we don't want to just push information out. There's a lot of ways to get information from the school district. We send out texts and emails, and our social media is very active in that kind of thing. But we also want to connect with you. We too are parents, and so it's a little bit self-serving. I walk away from each of these episodes with great tips and advice that are helpful in my family, and we hope it's helpful in yours too.
It's a lot of fun. And so again, you're going to love today's guest. Detective Shannon Garza is the school resource officer, the SRO at Lake Hazel Middle School, and she is a part of the Ada County Sheriff's Office. And she's a parent too. As you'll hear in this conversation, she's the parent of 3 young kids. So she's coming at this from a very cool place as well.
Yeah, and she's also extremely well educated. She was kind of going a different route and kind of some psychology and things like that you'll hear about. And so her advice is really sound and it's very practical. She spends every day with middle schoolers, which parents, if you have middle schoolers like I do and Ken's experience, you know this.
God bless her.
God bless her. She is amazing. Right. So listen up. It's going to be a great conversation.
All right, let's get to it. Here she is, Detective Shannon Garza.
We are here with Detective Shannon Garza from the Ada County Sheriff's Office. She is a school resource officer at Lake Hazel Middle School. Detective Garza, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
It's great to have you here, especially as a parent of a middle schooler and a high schooler. I'm always wondering, I think our SROs have a pretty mighty job because there's one of you for... How many lives are you responsible
we were at
for?
1,100-ish last year, and we're projected, I think, to be at 12 for this coming school year. So I'm like, there's a lot more of you than there are of me.
Yeah, why don't you tell us?
And then they laugh, and I'm like, no, that's not a funny thing.
Yeah. Well, and then why don't you tell us a little bit how you got into being an SRO? I assume you start maybe as a deputy and you go along the way, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, so my story actually started with the Meridian Police Department. I was hired back in 2011 now with them. So I've been in law enforcement for almost 12 years. And I was on the road doing all the road things, going to calls and pulling people over and doing traffic stops. And I'm like, I'm starting to get a little bored.
Yeah.
Which is a terrible thing to say, right? But I had
especially in a job that's so exciting, typically.
Right. And that's it exactly. You get into law enforcement for a variety of reasons, but realistically, a lot of people do get into it because it's fun and it's exciting. But there came a point where I'm like, I don't feel like I'm really making a difference, and I keep seeing the same people and I'm going to the same houses. And so I had a couple of good friends that were SROs, and they're like, you should do what we do. And I was like, So we had an opening and I applied, and it was supposed to be a temporary position initially, but I got in and just figured I'd try it out and see if I liked it. And here we are 7 years later, and I'm still doing it.
Wow.
Well, and you were at Victory Middle School, right?
I was, yep.
And for 3 or 4 years there?
For 3 years, yep. I was at Victory, and then I transitioned to the sheriff's office, and then I got on with the sheriff's office specifically to be an SRO because I loved it so much. And then I became the Lake Hazel SRO.
Middle schoolers. I mean,
yeah, I know.
Holy cow, they're different. What do you?
Yeah.
I mean, why do you like that age? What do you like about that age?
That's my preferred age. I love middle school kids, and they have hope. And not that high school kids don't. Sorry, high school kids. I'm not trying to be mean.
It's okay, high schoolers. Yeah.
They just already know who they want to be. Generally, by the time they get into 9th grade, right? They're already like, you can't tell me anything, and I'm like, Middle school is like that perfect magical time where you still have the kid, right? They're still willing to listen. They're still willing to maybe be persuaded that what they thought was reality isn't.
Sure.
They're not so set in their ways yet, but they're also so smart. So it's like you can see the adult they're going to be, but you can see the kid that they still are. And it kind of blends together in this really cool way where you can kind of flick them, and then they kind of maybe get on this path, and you're like, all right, I see you now. Like, you're going to go the way I need you to go. It's just cool. I feel like I personally can have the best impact at that age.
Especially saying that you wanted to get into being an SRO to make a difference, get them earlier.
Yes.
Be able to do that when they're more formative at those middle school years. Well, bless you for spending your day with middle schoolers. I often think wow, how did I live with 2 middle schoolers in my house a couple years ago? But
I'm not blowing sunshine at you, but to full disclosure, we did a story together, I don't know, about a year ago, and watching you go through the hallways and communicate with those middle schoolers, it was cool. And
thank you.
I'm not sure where the question is, but why is communication and why is connection so important?
So many reasons. I think two primary ones. One, at that age, their kids don't know that a smile is a smile. They see almost everything as like anger. So unless you explicitly say it, a kid's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, are you mad at me? Do you hate me? So for that age group in particular, in high school, I think to an extent is the same. Like, you have to have that communication piece, right? Because if you don't tell them, they're not going to know. And then I lost my train of thought on the other one. We'll circle back around to it. But basically, they need that. They need that level of connection. And there's the other that just came back. They're not getting those
you're faster than I am, by the way, just so you know.
Okay, good. I'm like, it'll come back, or I'll forget it, and it'll come back around.
Yeah.
But they're not getting meaningful connections in the world right now. They're stuck on social media, or latchkey kids is not a thing that we hear so much nowadays, but it's still happening. So they don't have the meaningful communication maybe outside of school. So for a lot of kids, school is the place where they get communication. They're getting food, like they're feeling safe. So those 2 reasons I think are really, really important for that particular age group.
Yeah, and they're building tools for life and how to engage with other people. When they're spending so much of their time behind a screen, often school is the only place that they're around other people, beside their family or whomever they live with.
Right.
And so if they're in school and they're having to communicate with not only their teachers, but all school staff, especially for some of our kids who may not have a positive experience with law enforcement, to have someone like you in there being a safe space and a good connection for them, what a valuable gift.
And half the time I'm like, just if we get to the point where you don't hate me, that's good. Because I've had kids come in and they're like, ew. And I'm like, I know, right? It sucks, man. I'm going to be here all the time. And then at the end of the year, maybe it's a bye, Garza. And I'm like, all right, that's a win. We've gone from ew to, you know my name. You said bye to me. If I yell your name down the hallway and say hi and do it in I'm always like, hey, and kids are like, you can see they're like, oh God, please, bye. Like, don't talk to me. But then you kind of, okay, hey, their body language gets a little more open and like, okay, fine. Like, you're just part of life. And I'm like, yep. Sorry.
But that is open communication. And really, that's what this whole episode is about, is like, how do we have open, honest communication with our kids? And if you can do that as an SRO, how do we help our parents come around to that really, let's have a real honest conversation? How do we do that?
It's hard sometimes. I mean, I'm a parent too. I've got 3 of my own kids, and my school kids are always like, wait, you got kids? I'm like, yes, I do. Right. And like, full disclosure, as a parent, like, I work in a building with a ton of kids, and then I go home to my own kids, and there are moments where I'm like, I don't want to right now. I'm really tired. I just walked in that door. I had a terrible day, or I had a great day, but like, I need 5 minutes, man. Like, let me like recheck as mom and get out of like, SRO mode. Sure. But it's not easy. And I know I'm not the only working parent. I mean, everybody has stuff. They've got a job, or they've got bills, or they've got health issues, or they've got all these things swirling. And sometimes it's hard to remember, like, oh, this little person, like, they're mine. Like, I made them, or I adopted them, or like whatever life circumstance brought them to me. I'm responsible for them. And that's not just like, you got food, you got water, you got shelter. It's, there's like emotions and like training and guidance and direction and all these things I have to give you too. And so sometimes I think we have to take a step back as a parent, speaking for my own self, and be like, like, I care about you and you're important to me, and I have to give you as much time and attention as all the other important things in my life, like my job, or like my health, or like my yoga, or whatever it is for me. Yep. And it seems really simple, but we forget.
And it's so good that you bring that up, because you're right. We all struggle with it. And if you can just maybe, be open and honest with your kids. Hey, I had a rough day at work. Yep. Can you give me 5 minutes? I'm going to go in my room, get myself together, and then I'm going to be all yours. And just letting them know. It's okay to let them know that you're struggling or you had a hard day, but still remembering to be intentional with your kids, because they deserve the best version of you, just like you'd put forth at work or in any of your endeavors.
And you will screw it up. Like, I do all the time. And then I have to go back and be like, I'm sorry. Like, it's a mom issue, not a you issue. I had a bad day. I, was kind of impatient when I came in the door. It doesn't mean that I don't love you. It just means that I wasn't in a good space in that moment in time. And that's another thing I don't think parents do a lot of. Like, I'm going to apologize to my kid. Yeah, I apologize all the time to my own kids.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, when my kids were young, I remember when my kids were young, one of the best breakthroughs I ever had with my wife and my kids, like, listen, I screwed up. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, it's kind of weird for them, but now that they're teenagers and one's going to college, it's like, hey, Dad, you screwed up. Like, hold on a second. Yeah, I did. But why is it why is it important to be vulnerable and honest with your kids?
Because if you're not, they're gonna know.
Sure.
Kids are so good at figuring out when we're lying. I mean, again, you live with these people, you see them all the time, they see you all the time. It's the whole adage about, like, do what I say, not what I do. Well, they're not going to, because they watch the way that you live your life, and they're going to emulate that. Like, kids are learning machines, right? They're going to pick up everything.
Right.
So if you are not open and honest and transparent, you're teaching them that, like, so when I'm a parent one day, if I yell at you, like, instead of being honest about it, I just need to lie and say it was your fault. So now I'm teaching you how to blame other people and not take responsibility for your own feeling. Right. And I'm not saying that to make anybody mad, but, like, that's a common pattern that I see, and I've been guilty of that too. And and I've been teaching my own kids, like, nobody has control over your feelings. Like, my 3-year-old will be like, you made me mad. And I'm like, nope. Sorry. I'm not responsible for how you feel. And you can just see, she's like, wait, that's not.
Hold on a second.
This is a lot. And I'm like, no, this happened, and you can feel mad about it. That's totally fine. But it doesn't mean it was my fault that you felt that way. Sure. And that's I know many adults that don't know that lesson, but we want to teach our kids to be better than us, right? Like, that was something that I was taught when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
So we have to be. I don't see an option where you're not open and honest and transparent with your kids.
Yeah. Well, and Katie mentioned too, about location. Mm-hmm. Why, or being intentional.
Yeah.
And so, like, like, little stuff. little things are big things, right? Why
Yes.
is the location of where you talk to your kid or the time, why does that stuff matter?
Because it depends, it's going to change how receptive they are to whatever it is you want to talk to them about. So Friday afternoon, 3:10, you're picking your kid up from middle school and they maybe had a test that week, or maybe their best friend hates them now, or maybe they broke up with their significant other. That's not the time to be like, okay, so like I want to talk about your grades and the fact that you haven't been doing your homework and you like didn't do your chores, because your kid's going to be like, are you kidding me right now? Like, because again, imagine if you got hammered with all that after your worst day at work, right?
Yeah.
So also in a group of their friends, like kids are going to save face. So you try to call your kid out in front of 15 other best friends, they're going to puff up and you can't tell me what to do. And kids are, like you told your mom. And then that kid's like, yeah, but I'm going to pay for that later. Right?
Right.
So you have to pick a time and a place that, and maybe it's not going to be ideal for everybody, but put yourself in their shoes. Does my kid get hangry? Okay, I'm going to feed him. And then maybe after a little bit, after they've digested, now's the time to talk. They get really embarrassed in public spaces. Maybe I'm not going to talk to them when we're walking through Walmart. Maybe I'm going to talk to them on the drive home after we went shopping. So you have to pick those times and places so that you're going to get them at their best self and when they're most receptive to whatever it is you want to talk to them about. You can't just hammer them.
Yeah.
You ain't going to listen.
I know. And it's hard as a parent too, right? To look for
Yes.
things to praise, like instead of always just hammering them about the things they're not doing right.
Yes.
And so we have a joke in our house because we were struggling with one of our sons a few years ago. And I was trying to find something to praise him about, and his behavior was like
hard sometimes.
Oh, you turned the light off when you left the room. Yay, good job.
Yes.
It's the only thing you did right today, but we're going to praise it.
Yeah.
So trying to find, things that build them up.
Yep.
And then you're not just tearing them down all the time.
And that's hard because the research is like you need so many positive interactions to counteract just the one negative, right?
Yeah.
And it's a crazy ratio. It's like 4 to 1 or more than that. Don't quote me. I'm just going by what I remember.
Yeah.
But we have to, right? Because otherwise, I've asked my own kids, like, is mom a nag? And they're like, meh. I'm like, but do you know that I love you? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, sometimes I'm annoying, but at least they know I love them. I'll take that. I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
That ratio is kind of working.
Take the wins.
Yes.
Well, okay, I'm going to admit to being wrong and dumb, so I'm going to totally segue and go back. So I messed up. But I wanted to ask you a question. Why are you passionate about your job? And and this is a hard question. I get it. But
It is.
Best day and worst day. I mean, because again, to watch you interact with middle schoolers is cool. But best day, worst day. Why are you passionate?
I wonder if maybe to add on to that before you answer, maybe people don't really know what the duties of an SRO is.
We should clarify.
And so maybe if you could kind of
clarify.
lay out a typical day or what you're dealing with, and then why those things make it.
Yeah.
I like that because a lot of people are like, you're just here to arrest people. And I'm like, I would be really bad at my job if I did that.
Right. Or you're just walking around with a drug sniffing dog all day to get people in trouble or something. I mean, I don't even know.
just want to give tickets. I'm like, no, that's paperwork. I don't want to do paperwork. I want to have fun. I joke and I say that SROs do everything because we kind of do. So a typical day can be anything. So I wake up, I put my shoes on, I put my pants on like everybody else. I go to my school because most of us report directly to our schools and we stay there for the duration of the day, which is great. So I'm there when kids show up. I'm hopefully there when kids go home. I'm there the whole day, generally. Throughout the course of that day, whatever happens, I'm there to respond to. So we've had cases in my schools where kids have a mystery medical thing and they fall down, or like a kid gets his head hit, or a kid takes pills that they weren't supposed to. So maybe I'm dealing with medical stuff and getting EMS to come and navigating contacting a parent and getting the kid to the hospital and figuring out what you took and how you took it and where it came from. We might have, I know people don't like to think about it, but we do have substance issues from time to time in our schools. So then we're navigating, like, what is it? Where did it come from? Who else took it aside from you? Like, who else knew about it? So navigating that. Navigating threats. School threats is another big thing that occupies my mind. I tell my middle schoolers, if I have a, terror or a nightmare, it's that we're going to have a thing happen in a school building. And so that's something that my brain is it takes up a lot of time and space.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
It's scary. I mean, kids will be like, well, you can't be scared. I'm like, oh no, I can be scared. And I am. I mean, and I'd be silly to say I wasn't, but
you're well trained, and so you can rely on your training when those scary situations happen, right?
And also I use it as a teaching moment because I tell kids, you're good to be scared, but courage is doing the right thing anyway, even when you're freaked out. And they're always like, oh, okay. I'm like, but that's what it is, right?
And again, that transparency, I think, is the key.
Yeah, because if I'm like, oh, no, I'm not scared, they're going to be like, whatever, you're full of it. And I'd be like, no, I'm really not scared of anything. But that would be a lie.
Of course.
But, I mean, it could involve that. It could be, a kid, oh, my friend said he hates school today, so he just wants to blow it up. Well, now that's a full investigation, right? Because that's a misdemeanor crime in the state of Idaho. It could be a parent issue, a custodial issue. Mom wants to come pick up kid, but she's not on any court paperwork, and dad doesn't want the school to let kid go to mom, and now we're navigating that. Or we have things sometimes that happen in the neighborhoods where, a police chase or like someone robbed a Walmart or whatever it is, and now we're putting the school in a hall check, or coordinating with local agencies around to make sure that we're safe and contained while all the chaos is being contained outside.
Right.
And then on top of that, there's all of the other law enforcement stuff like health and welfare investigations. So kids will come up and be like, my friend told me today that, their parent or their guardian or their whoever is doing XYZ to them. Now that's an investigation, right? Because do I have a child abuse concern? And then you've got just the kids that come up and they're like, my friends suck. And you're like, tell me about that. And then you're navigating like, how do you preserve this friendship? Do you want to get out of it? What does that look like? Or, my mom is mean and well, she's not doing anything criminal, but how do you go home and like navigate that so that you guys don't get into a fight again? When COVID happened, there was a lot of working with teachers and staff too. COVID was hard. And I know you guys know that because you were in it too.
Sure, we all, yeah. Sure.
But our teachers had to put up with, hate from parents, hate from the community, hate from the larger world. They had to pivot to an online teaching model where this is not something we trained or knew how to do before. So some of it was even like, hey, you're doing a great job. Like, I see you. I know what you're doing. Like, you can do this, man. And like being a cheerleader for them. So I feel like we kind of are the balm or the salve over the entire school building and community to just kind of keep it running okay. Like, I'm not going to say it runs great because sometimes it doesn't. But if I can move my little chess pieces around and try to help people keep on trucking the way they're supposed to, then I feel like I've done a good job.
Okay, so that's a big job. Yeah, you do a lot. I'm overwhelmed listening to your day.
It's making me tired.
Yeah. So when you lay it out like that and what the daily activities of an SRO are, what are your highlights in there? What are like your little moments that you strive for?
So there's always like, I got the bad guy off the street. That's a good day when I'm like, yes, I like solved that problem, and I solved it in like a very visible kind of way. But sometimes I have a student, and if she ever watches this, she's going to know I'm talking about her, but it's fine. But sometimes it's as simple as like you've worked with somebody, and like by work with, I mean, you're in relation with these kids and staff and all these people, right? Like they come to talk to you, they tell you about their life, you get to know them, you get to know their favorite shows, their friends, all those things. And there's one student I've known for 2 years now, and she came up recently and she's like, I'm going to get rid of social media. And in my heart, I was like, oh, like, yes. But I'm like, tell me, like, what's up with that? And she's like, well, I just, came to the realization, and she kind of like told me why. And I'm like, man, that's a great win. Like, I've been working with her and talking to her. She's got a really great head on her shoulders. She's smart. She's somebody that wants to help and kind of like steer her friends in the right direction, but she's learning that they're not always going to listen to her, and she's wasting a lot of time and resources and care and energy. So she's like, it's just not worth it anymore. And I'm like, high five. Like, cool. So that is a win. That's I mean, cool. It might seem like a small thing, but like that's a choice that might affect her future, right? It might really take her down a path that doesn't involve drama and crazy. So
that is a win.
Super cool. Okay, well, I want to delve into that some more. I also want to delve into conversation etiquette and what that looks like. But let's take a break real quick, and we'll be just back in just a moment with our Dr. Detective Shannon Garza, and we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Follow West Ada School District across your preferred social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Nextdoor, and YouTube. You can find us there today.
And we're back with Shannon. We're going to talk about some conversation etiquette and things like that, how parents can really communicate and connect more deeply with their kids. So why don't we start with just some pointers. Where at the very base, if there are parents who really are struggling to connect with their kids, what would be some of your recommendations?
Number one, parent, put your phone away.
Yep.
You cannot have a conversation when you're like, yes, tell me about the thing that happened. Because your kid's like, why? You don't even want to talk to me right now. Like,
right.
You're too busy playing Bejeweled or Candy Crush or whatever it is.
And what you're saying, I mean, this sounds very obvious, right? But I've caught myself doing that before. Like, I'll be cooking dinner. I'll be looking at my phone. My kids will come up and ask a question. I'm like, And then I'm like, I'm doing exactly what I know I'm not supposed to be doing.
I've done it to my husband. And then I'm like, put it down, face down, slide it away to make it very visual. Like, you got my attention now.
Yeah.
We're dialed in,
Yeah, I'm going to focus on you, and I'm not going to be like, doing this kind of weird thing.
Right.
So it does seem obvious, but phones have become more personal and connected than like our wallets used to be, right? So it's almost an extension of your body. Mm-hmm. So it is a very conscious thing, like you talked about intentional earlier. It's intentional. You've got to put the thing away, and even if it's face down, slide it away, face down on the table, like make the phone go away. And make the eye contact, because your kid might be like, oh, this is weird. You're looking at me. But it just shows like, hey, I'm here. I'm with you. I want to know what you want to tell me.
Right.
And with that, like, you actually have to let them talk. There's another thing. Like,
it's the whole listening thing that's a hard time for me. Yeah?
It is. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard it. I'm sure we've all heard, like, you need to be listening, not with the intent on what you're going to say back. That's actually a skill, I think, that a lot of people need 100%. To learn. It's not something that we're innately born with, because we're social creatures, right? We want to talk. So it's like, ooh, my turn, right?
Yeah.
I got something to say. It's the kid in class that's like bouncing, like, I want to do the thing. So you actually have to listen with no preconceived notions about where that conversation is going to go, no planning a rebuttal or a really great follow-up or a really cool whatever in the back of your head. And you have to let them talk. And then you also have to, as a parent, like, you want to guide the conversation, but you don't want to guide it by telling them. You want to guide by how you ask. So I don't like closed-ended questions. There's a time and a place for them. Like, you got a broken window. All right, who did that? Like, that's a closed-ended question. Right. There's a limited.
Somebody broke the window.
Somebody broke the window. We're going to talk about it right now. But, like, a common one is, parents are like, how was your day? And kids are like, fine.
Fine.
Yeah. Or did you have a good day at school? Yep.
What'd you do today? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, those are, what you're going to get before you even ask it, right? It's almost like how are you doing? And everybody goes, great or fine.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's fun when I'm like, actually, and you can see the panic set and they're like, oh God, I didn't actually want to know.
I didn't really want to talk to you.
No, I just was being polite. But that's an open-ended question, so kind of be careful what you ask for. But with your kids, you have to invite that conversation by asking those open-ended questions. If you really don't have time for it, did you have a good day? Yep, cool.
Right.
Okay, but if you've got the time and the space, you need to be able to give them the space to talk and then to continue that conversation by not shutting it down like, oh, that's great. But, okay, you said you had a great day. Like, what was so great about it? Tell me more about that. It's one of my favorite phrases. Tell me more about that.
And if you could start when they're young, I've read some things where kids will tell you, they'll drone on and on about whatever they're into, when they're little, Paw Patrol or something, just listen. Yeah, Legos are great. Paw Patrol is great. Yeah. Tell me more. What do you like about that? But then as they get older, and the fun thing about parenting is if you start something young and you can kind of see it come to fruition.
Yep.
Now that we have teenagers, they'll tell me things that I'm kind of like, inside I'm going, oh my gosh, kids do that? Like, your friends are doing what? But on my face I'm like, oh, what do you think about that?
Yes.
Do you think is
Tell
that
me
safe?
more about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they'll
but
they're bigger things, right? And so you want to have that open communication.
Yes.
So that they'll come to you when they need help or need to navigate.
And you bring up a really good point, like the poker face is a thing. Like if your child starts to tell you a thing and your face is cracking and the eyebrows are furrowing or you're turning red, like some of those things we can't control.
Right.
I tell kids all the time, I'm like, I turn red when I get anxious or embarrassed sometimes. I just can't help it. I'm fair skinned. Like it is a thing.
It just does it.
But if we can poker face it and be like, and you don't have to, wow, okay. Like, like non-committal responses, those facilitate more conversation,
drawing
right?
More out. Yeah.
And sometimes just the head nod, like, like the kid's like, oh, okay, she's listening. Like she's tracking. I'm going to keep telling
She's
her
not
stuff.
freaking out on me.
If you freak out, they're never going to tell you anything ever again. So you have to almost like, and then go scream into a closet if that's what you need to do to then figure out, okay, what do I do with all that? Like, I just got a bunch of stuff. But in the moment, it can't feel like a judgment because they will not talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about judgment, but one of the things that was interesting to me years ago, I saw a study, and I've got a son and a daughter, and it's not even a gender thing so much as a personality thing, but it can be gender too, in the sense that like it seems like guys are more. We tend to be more like, yeah, we're going to talk and we're going to look at the windshield. We're not going to really talk to each other. But whereas my daughter, when she was young, she would literally grab my face and make me look in her eyes, and so it's personality. I mean, is that a thing?
It is a thing. I mean, there's studies showing like girls tend to be more relational, right? And like if you look at studies on bullying, some of the worst bullying comes from girls because relationships are powerful weapons and tools that can be used to, get an army behind you to go harass this other girl just because she wore the wrong shoes or she doesn't like she likes the same boy as you, and like how dare her, right? So yeah, I think there's some science behind that girls do tend to be more relational, and so they do, I think, have a better ability to sit and have that one-on-one conversation, whereas guys, the best way I found to talk to, especially a middle school boy, I had a student 2 years ago now, and he was having the worst day. Like, so I'm like, it is lunchtime, like I'm getting hangry, so I go get my sandwich. And he's sitting out on the blacktop on the back side of the school near our basketball hoops. I go sit down, and we both are leaning up against posts, and I'm eating my sandwich. I'm like, what's up? And, we're not looking at each other.
Sure.
We're kind of away at an angle. We had a really great conversation that day about what he was struggling with and what he was doing to make him feel a little bit better and kind of what was going on in his life. That wouldn't have been the same if I'd been like, tell me what your deal is, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's fine. It's nothing, man. You don't even understand. Yeah. So yes, I mean, even in my own work, I've seen that. Like, you have to approach people differently.
Sure.
Depending on what their preferences are, and sometimes just depending on the situation.
Well, and as we've already established, you see a lot. You do. You see a lot. So what should parents be talking to their kids about?
Everything. Sex, finances, relationships, specifically in relationships, what constitutes abusive and controlling behavior as opposed to what love really is.
Sure.
There's a whole misconception on, well, if they do this, they love me. No, if they do that, like if they were an adult, they would go to jail because that's abusive and controlling, or, that's a crime technically.
Right.
They need to be talking about social media. They need to be talking about drugs. They need to be talking about vaping. If you have a kid in middle school and you have not talked to them yet about the use of a vape, you're too late.
Yep.
Because they have either already got exposed to it or they're going to within the first week at middle school. And I don't say that to slam middle school. It's a great place, but we are being socialized that vaping and drug use is normal, and that crazy behavior. I mean, there's tons of popular music videos that kind of like glorify, like if I act like a crazy human and I smash your window with a baseball bat, I love you. And so kids are learning these patterns. And and I know it's a hot topic, right? Parents are like, well, I want to be the one to teach my kid. Then teach them. You have to do it. Yeah. You cannot say, well, I'm going to wait until this day, or I'm going to wait till they're in 8th grade, or I'm going to wait till they get their driver's license. If you're talking to your kid about drug use and drunk driving and seat belts and all of that the day they get their driver's license, you're like a year too late. Like, you should have been talking about that stuff a long time ago. And again, I'm not trying to shame a parent because I am one, and it's hard.
It's not easy.
We've got all these things, but anything you can think. Finances is a big one too. I mean, kids seem to think money grows on trees.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It doesn't, and you also can't steal it from other people because there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with that. So literally anything you can think of, you need to be talking to your kid about. And you can start it young. I mean, use age-appropriate language, use age-appropriate concepts. Mental health is another big one that I see, where we still are in a place where that gets pathologized a lot, like, oh, you're just crazy.
Right.
No, it's normal. I tell kids, I'm like, it is normal for you to even wonder what it would be like if you weren't here. That's not suicidal ideation. That's just like, what would it be like if like I didn't exist? Would my family be the same? Would my community be the same? I think that's a normal thought for people to have, but we get scared of having those conversations because it's like, oh, I'm going to put that thought in their head. No, you're not. You're just acknowledging that like, hey, everybody has thoughts sometimes and it's okay to talk to other people about it. It's knowing when that stuff starts to become a problem. And what I try to teach parents is if it tips the line into danger, like danger to your child, danger to other people, or it is illegal, now you have something that you need to do about that. But if we're playing in like the realm of hypothetical, it's okay to have those hypothetical conversations. But if you know stuff is happening, you are now obligated to act. And I think I just want to bring up too, I don't know that a lot of people really understand in the state of Idaho, everybody's a mandated reporter. So the way our code is read, so if you know about stuff, you actually have an obligation to report it to social services, to the local police department, because that's how we keep everybody safe, right?
Wow. Okay, so you just really stepped right into what I was about to ask you. Sure. As a parent, you know, I see my kids' snaps, you know, sometimes, and I see stuff from kids who I know their families, and I'm perplexed because I see things that I know are dangerous.
Yeah.
But Ken and I talk about being cringy parent. We don't be the cringy parent. I'm certainly not trying to be the cool parent. Not trying to be cool, not trying to make waves or rock boats, but where do I draw the line and say, you know what, I have to let their mom know. I have to let their dad know.
Yeah, that is a hard conversation.
Yeah, it's really hard. And you bring up mandatory reporting.
I know that's scary. People are like, oh my God. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry, but it's a thing. So I think it depends. It depends on how well do you know that family? Right. How comfortable do you feel having that conversation? I had, it wasn't my case, but it was a case that I was familiar with years ago where a student didn't report a thing and somebody lost their life over it. And so I always tell my kids now, I'm like, would you rather have a friend that's here and mad at you, or would you rather have a friend that's now not here anymore and therefore they can't be mad? And usually kids are like, yeah, I don't care. I want them to be mad at me. And I'm like, good choice. Because, you know, some things we can't take back. So if you feel comfortable or confident having those conversations, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But that's where people like me are great, because I've had parents reach out. They're like, I found a thing and I think it's about that kid. Here you go. And I'm like, cool, thank you. Right. Now I'm going to run with that. I'm going to go talk to the kid. I'm going to go talk to the parent. I'm going to, you know, if it's in a different jurisdiction and I know where it is, I'm going to forward that to them for follow-up. So
that's good to know. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, and it can feel overwhelming too. I mean, like social media trends, it seems like it's changing so fast. And I'm not saying anything that we don't already know. But how do you stay on top, or any tips and tricks in terms of how to stay on top of what's trending and what your kids are doing?
You are not going to, like, just flat out, like, there are not enough hours in the day for us as adults to even attempt it. I mean, I have fake profiles, and the last time I logged on to them was probably about a year and a half ago because I just don't have the time.
Sure.
So what I do is I go up to the kids and I'm like, what's going on lately? Show me. And you'd be surprised, like you were mentioning what your kids tell you. If you're like, hey, can you show me some of the things that you watch on TikTok? Or can you tell me like what some of the things that are happening right now are? You might be shocked, especially if you can do it in a non-judgmental way where your kid's like, oh, you're not going to use this against me. No, I want to know. I'm just kind of curious. I mean, they will show you. They're always going to be better than we are at technology, right? They have more time on their hands. Sure. They have more drive to be good at it, because as adults, like, we've got jobs and we've got bills and we've got families and things that drive our behavior. Kids are still figuring all that out, and that dopamine dump from social media is such a powerful pull. So if you can kind of get in as like a consultant, like, hey, I'm kind of curious, would you mind teaching me some stuff or showing me things? That's the best way to do it, because 2 reasons. 1, you're figuring out what's happening.
Sure.
But 2, it's a way to build connection with your child. Because you may not, I don't care about social media. I hate it. I tell kids that. I'm like, I hate Snapchat, and I'm sorry, but like, I'm
a marketer and I feel that way.
Yeah, totally.
It's horrible to admit, but yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry, but like in TikTok, I'm like, sorry, but I'm not sorry. It's just the truth, right? But that's a way to show like, okay, I may not like this thing, but I care about you as my child, and this is an important thing to you, so help me understand it.
Well, and I guess along those lines too, like how do we figure out or what is their priority right now? And why is it important to know? Because your priorities are going to change, right? Your priorities as a middle schooler versus your priorities. Why is it important to know what our kids are prioritizing?
Because if we don't, we're missing the whole boat on what they're doing and how they're doing it and why they're doing it. And it's funny to say because I know it's obvious, but like they're not little carbon copies of us, right?
Sure.
Like I look at my kids and even the 3-year-old, I'm like, you are your own person. And sometimes I don't know if I like all that, but like it is what it is, right? But they have their own stuff going on. And if we don't know, we don't have to know everything. We're not going to be able to like sit and, mark out our kid's brain and be like, okay, this is what's happening right here. But it just gives us a better of an understanding of what is important to them and then how we might use that to drive them down the path that we want them to go. And we also forget, like, I tell kids, I'm like, your brains are squishy. And they laugh. And I'm like, but the science shows, like, brain development is not finalized till mid to late 20s. And I'm always like, sorry, guys, it takes longer for you.
My frontal lobe is still working. I'm not going to lie. Yeah.
Sometimes I think mine's online and offline. And but, like, they don't have those built-in brakes that we do yet. Like, they're still operating based off of, like, this feels good or it seems like a good idea or my buddy said it's true so it must be true. They don't have the life experience that we do to be able to discriminate between that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. I shouldn't be on TikTok till 3 a.m. because I have a science test and I'm going to be really grumpy and tired and I'm going to fail it. So we are the brakes, right? And part of that is kind of having an understanding of this is what is important to my kid. This is how and why they do it. And here's how manipulate's a bad word, right? It has a negative connotation. But isn't that what we do as parents?
Yeah.
That's what I do as an SRO. Yeah. I mean, so we use that to manipulate the situation to the outcome that we want.
The best outcome for them.
Exactly.
100%.
It's not a malicious, it's not like an evil cackling, like, I'm going to put you here. It's, hey, like, this is a bad path, a scary path. I want you on this path. I can kind of do these things and maybe that will tip you that way without, making you mad at me or like pulling things away that will make you hate me. Because a lot of parents go into like attack mode or like, oh my gosh, like panic mode, like we got to take all the things away now. Like you screwed up and I'm just going to hammer you.
All right.
That can actually drive them towards all those things that we want them to stay away from.
I would love to talk about that some more, especially I'd love to talk about correction. But let's take another quick break, Shannon, and we'll come back and talk about how do we correct and how do we do it the right way.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Go to YouTube, search West Ada School District, and like and subscribe today.
All right, Detective Garza, here's a last few points we'd like to cover before we let you go on your way. Correcting our kids and kind of getting them back on the right path. So what would you say are some good tools for parents kind of correcting their kids, maybe that is effective correction of behaviors?
First, I think it depends on why you're correcting. If you are, I always go back to consequence versus punishment. If you're correcting to punish your kid, you're doing it wrong. If you're correcting to teach them boundaries, to give them consequences that are in line with like a family contract or a plan that you have put together as a household, that's a different thing. So like the gut knee-jerk reaction of like, I'm going to take all your things and make your life miserable, that's a punishment.
Right.
That is not going to be an effective correction because it's going to drive them down the wrong path, right? Sure. So family contracts are a really great tool that I like a lot. And some parents, I just see their faces. They're like, you want me to what? I'm like, sit down with your kid as a family unit and talk about what should be in this plan and why. and ask them. One of my favorite questions is, what do you think is an appropriate consequence for that? I do that at school, and kids are
open-ended
hilarious.
stuff. Yeah. You tell me what the consequence should be.
What should happen here? I should get 5 days of lunch detention, and I look at my vice principal, and we're both giggling. We're like, we wanted to give you like 2, but and we, we're not obviously going to be like, you get 5, but a lot of times they're going to be harsher on themselves than we would be as parents. But by getting them to come up with that answer, well, okay, maybe we don't do 5 days of, you can't go out with your friends. Maybe we just do 3 for that type of an offense. Okay, yeah, that's reasonable. You get them to buy in, like, okay, here's the things I can't do. Here's the logical consequences that come from it, so that when it happens, say your family curfew is 10 and your 16-year-old comes home at 11:30, hey, as a family, we agreed that our curfew is 10. The consequence for that is loss of your phone for the next weekend. So, you made a choice, and this is the consequence that comes with that choice. That's not fair. It's BS, whatever.
We talked about this.
Yeah, we came to this as a family, and if you want to renegotiate, we can do that at a later time, but this is the consequence for right here, right now, based on what we talked about as a family. And then it's not that you can't, you're my kid, and you're going to do what I say. Don't do this. Don't point at your kids. It doesn't feel good when people do it to us.
Right.
So I really like parenting plans, family contracts, that sort of thing. The other thing is just a lot of parents don't even know how to talk to their kids, like we've kind of talked about. Go to 208 or truth208.org or betheparents.org.
Okay,
Those
cool.
are really good resources. They actually have links to, it's Boise Radar, RADAR, which is, they do substance abuse literature, and they provide resources for Idaho families. But you can actually order a deck of cards, looks like a deck of playing cards, and it's got conversational starters on it. You can even order a print PDF version. And if you don't want to do that, just Google, how do I talk to my kid? Questions to ask at the dinner table. You'll get tons of lists on.
Well, I'm getting a thing right now on Instagram, an ad for these types of cards.
Cool.
Conversation starters. So I think it's great that they're available as a free resource.
Yeah, they're free. Don't pay for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll be sure and include those links in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're a great resource. Yep.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
go ahead.
your conversation starter. So something that we've just made a priority in our house is family dinner, right? When we're not at the ball field or running around from practice, we try as much as we can, as many times a week, to sit down together around the table. No phones. We're going to talk about our day. No TV, no media, nothing.
Yep.
And we're going to ask open-ended questions.
Yeah. Yes. and it sounds like I sound like, and we do this, and we have flowers, and it's candles.
No, yeah, that doesn't
but
really.
Just little things. If you can implement some kind of strategies for your family to have those conversations, do you recommend that type of thing, something else?
Absolutely. I'm affiliated with an organization called Save My Family, and we've done a couple speaking events around the Treasure Valley, one of which was at Star Middle in the last school year. And that's one of the things I suggest, actually, is that people do family dinners. I'm like, it doesn't have to be all the time. It doesn't have to be phenomenal, but usually I define it as 15 minutes at least of no phone, no TV. Y'all are looking at each other and you're talking about something. It doesn't have to be a big important topic. It could be like, our neighbor is wacky. Like, let's talk about him, right? But it's building that communication, that engagement, that connection with your family. Another one that I suggest, we live in such a busy world. Don't over involve your kids and stuff. Like we overcommit as adults all the time. I am notorious personally for wanting all the shiny things. I'm like, I can do that and I can do that. And I'm like, then sleep. Like, where's that go? Yeah.
Darn. Sorry to interrupt, but one of my teachers sent home an essay, and one of the things on the essay was, no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
And I love it. I'm like, in other words, like saying no is important, and so that you have make time for the great.
Yes.
And anyway, I just sorry to interrupt. But
I love that too.
No is a complete sentence.
I have to remind myself of it. And as parents, that's your job to be that no for your kids. So maybe you've got a high school kid who's a potential collegiate athlete, and he's volunteering, and he's got a part-time job, and he's in XYZ club. Okay, but when is he sleeping? When does he have time just to be a kid? So I usually suggest that families limit those things to maybe 2. If you've got a bigger family, if you've got 5 kids, maybe they get 1. And if you've got 2 kids, maybe they can have 2 or 3 each, right? But by limiting those outside commitments, it makes us, I think, be better present parents, because then we're not like driving here and like, how do I, like, okay, you pick up that kid, I'm going to go to that one's
Spreadsheets,
game.
yeah.
Yeah, it's logistical nightmare,
Yeah,
but it also
yeah.
protects and preserves some of their time. And I know we want to like keep them busy so they don't go off and do half-cocked things on Snapchat, but there's value in being bored. There's value in having space to just be a kid. So those are really easy things to build in.
I love you saying that, because listen, my kids, both my kids do a lot of stuff and it's great, but I'm like, hey, to your point, no, when are we going to stop and take a breath and sleep and do and eat well and do all those things that matter?
You have to recharge your batteries, you know.
You
100%.
mentioned sleep. The only other thing I'd add, take the phones out of the bedroom if that is their alarm clock. Get them a real physical, old school, you got to hit the button on the thing alarm clock.
Across the room,
you're
get
so
up out of bed.
Well, it's like, you clearly know this, right? That's the battle we have right now. My oldest goes to football practice super early in the morning. He's like, I have to have my phone in my room. It's my alarm clock. I'm like, I'm up at that time getting ready for work. I will wake you up.
Yeah.
We'll make this work.
Because they do not have the willpower to not check that phone. I mean, I'm a grown up, and if I bring my phone in the bedroom, I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, what's going on over here? And I'm like, no, don't do it. So I say no phones in bedrooms, like household wide, depending on your job, right? Like if you're on call or you're someone that needs to have a phone, it is what it is, right? But your kids should not have a phone. It should not be the alarm clock. And they're not going to like it, but it's too bad, because you're allowing them to have that time and space and sleep. I am floored constantly by the amount of kids that are like, oh, I'm so tired.
Oh, gosh.
My friend texted me at midnight and they were having a crisis, and I'm like, what happened? Oh, they're mad at their boyfriend. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You were up for 4 hours. What time did you wake up for school? I almost missed the bus and I'm so tired. And I'm like, get an alarm clock, man. Oh, it's my phone. Yeah, dumb. It's not a good idea.
And that's a simple thing, but it is a thing though. Yeah, keeping those phones out of the rooms, and it's huge.
Okay, so if I can shift gears a little bit, curious, because you're with middle schoolers all day, and most of us parents maybe have one or two middle schoolers or high schoolers in the house, or even elementary kids. What do you think are some things that kids wish their parents would talk to them about, or maybe would bring up, open conversation?
They're not going to tell you, but they're going to they've told me, and they want to know that their parents actually, I'm not going to swear, but they want to know that their parents give a crap about them. I have a lot of kids that are like, I just annoy my parents. And I'm like, how do you know? They tell me. And I'm like, okay. I mean, like, there's a certain level of like, I have kids and I'm like, man, you're being a pill right now. And they laugh and I laugh, but they don't believe that they're a pill. Like, they know I'm being funny because I tell them that they're valued and I show them that I try to. Sure. But I think a lot of our families are either so busy doing the things that they're doing that, once again, it's not a priority, or they literally are telling their kids, and I've had more than one kid come and tell me this, like, I was told that I'm annoying and to go away. And I'm like, do I laugh with them and be like, to be fair, you are sometimes, or do I go, man, like, that must really hurt, because that really does hurt. Like, I'm a grown-up, and if somebody told me that would hurt my feelings. Mm-hmm. So your kids want to know, our kids want to know that they are not a pest, that they actually are valued and wanted by us, and that they're loved. And one of the things I tell parents a lot when I can, tell your kids you love them. Like, it may seem obvious, but I can tell you quite a few adults and people in my personal life that I know, they were never told that they were loved as a child. Yeah. Like, they knew it. Like, they had a roof over their head. They had food, right? They got the clothes. Like, maybe it wasn't flashy or awesome, but, like, they were taken care of. But there's a difference between being shown that and then having someone, like, look you in the eyes and tell you, like, I love you. Like, I care about you, right?
That. Yeah.
So it seems an obvious, but I don't think it is.
Well, it's funny. When my kids were young, I was like, okay. I just started a tradition. And it wasn't intentional, but I'm like, hey, I haven't had a hug and a kiss all day. And so, when they're 2 and 3, now my big 18-year-old who's bigger than me, I'm like, hey, man, I haven't had a hug and kiss all day. And it's like, I think little traditions like that, I don't know. There's no question there, but it's important. And so that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, it is, because once again, their brains are not wired the way ours are. We cannot assume that things we take for granted, they're going to take for granted too. You smile at them, they may be like, oh, that was a weird smile. Like, she might be mad at me, or God, she found out about the thing I did and I'm going to get yelled at later. And all it was like, hey, like, I see you, I love you, I hope you had a good day. Like, we actually need to couple the things that we do with words coming out of our mouth. And again, it's simple. Just tell your kids you love them. And I tell my kids all the time, and it's funny, but I'm like, I don't always have to like you, but I always love you. And they laugh, and they're like, I know. And I'm like, but it's true, right? And that's, again, part of that being transparent thing. I don't always like them. Sometimes they're little crazy people, but I always, always, always love them.
And it's not too late, right? Like I'm feeling for some parents that may be hearing this, like, oh, I've screwed my kids up and they're already in high school. Start now. It's never too late. Like just jump in and do little things that can make a difference, because you can change their trajectory for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. And no parent does it. We all screw our kids up. Like, you know, somebody out there, like, shoot Ken an email if, like, you didn't screw your kids up.
We want to.
I want to know. I want to know, because I want to talk to you too and figure out what you did. But none of us are going to get out of this life unscathed, unscarred. And it's that ratio, right? It's the positives to the negatives. One, I love you can counteract a whole lot of garbage in the day.
Yeah.
So that's like when you're trying to get them off to school, out the door to the bus, and you're rushing and you lose your temper, and then you like send them off on the bus. You're like, I love you. I'm sorry. I love you. And they like leave, and you're worried about it all day at work. Like, gosh, we had such a hard morning, and they get home from school and they're like, what are you talking about? I had a great day. I don't even remember this morning.
And they are super. All kids are super resilient.
Yep.
Yeah,
yes,
it's true.
Thank goodness, man. Yeah.
Well, Shannon, listen, you're amazing. I always say though, hey, is there anything that we haven't asked you that we should be asking you, or any other final thoughts? That I mean, I know we've talked about a lot of stuff, but anything we haven't hit on that we should be hitting on?
Maybe resources for parents, like.
To add to the resources, your SRO, people like me, we want to help you.
Yeah.
We did not get into this job to harass all the peoples or take all the paperwork. Like, we want to help people. Your school administration, your school counselors, West Ada School District has some really great social workers that are also really helpful. You can contact the 208 Idaho Helpline or 288 rather, the Idaho Helpline for help. If you're really struggling, you can ask for a navigator, and that's a cool person that will help you navigate the system and the resources available. We have the Pathways Crisis Center for adults that you can reach out to. We have a mobile crisis helpline. It's 208-334-0808. I call them a lot, which is why I know the number. And they're licensed clinicians employed by Health and Welfare who help with mental health resources. You can call 988, which is the Suicide Prevention Crisis Resource Hotline, also for resources. Ada County Dispatch, 208-377-6790. And then don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the last thing I would leave parents with. Like, I am a human. I am flawed. Man, I have learned over the last year to ask for lots of help, and it's been great. You will find that people want to help you, and they're willing to do it.
No perfect humans, yeah.
No, I tell kids, I'm like, you find a unicorn, I want to see that thing. Like, never seen one.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah. Shannon, this is super helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm getting a lot out of it as a parent too, so I hope that all of our listeners are as well. But thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're the best. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Whoa, thank you to Shannon. I mean, that was quite the conversation.
How much information does she have? Holy moly.
She's brilliant. And the way she's just able to recall and come up with these this information and resources for us.
My brain does not work that way, but she's amazing.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll put all that information in the show notes so that you can access the 100%. Resources she shares with us. But she's amazing.
Well, and so thank you to her. And you guys, listen, we are just building this podcast. So please take a minute. Subscribe to the podcast, give us a review, let us know what you think, and we really want to hear from you all, because again, this podcast is about how do we best serve you, how do we best give you the topics and conversations that you want to hear about that are best going to help you. So email us, communicate@westada.org. The email again, and we'll put that in the show notes, but communicate@westada.org is where you can shoot us an email and say, hey, Ken, Katie, I'd love to hear a conversation about this, or my child is dealing with this or that. So go there. You can learn more about us or see past episodes at westada.org/podcast. So, and the YouTube channel as well. You can watch. You can either listen while you're walking the dog, or you can watch on YouTube if that's the way you consume. But either one of those places, you can find us there.
Yeah, it's great. We have lots of information out there and ways to access it. And coming up on our next episode, we have Dear Parents, a letter from a teacher, which I think is going to be amazing.
One of our awesome Studley teachers, Carmi Scheller, she's a 5th grade teacher at Star Elementary. And yeah, Dear Parents, a letter from a teacher. I mean, it's kind of a broad topic, but
it is a broad topic, but Carmi really is great. She serves in a lot of leadership roles with her peers, with her fellow teachers, and she's also just a great resource in the community. She's a wonderful person, and she'll have a lot of good insight and good information for how to best communicate with your teacher, how to build those relationships, and all kinds of good gems there.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So keep your eyes open for the next episode 3 of the West Ada School District podcast. For now, thank you for Katie and for Detective Garza. It's been a blast, and we will see you next time.